just like I have a lot of ideas and sometimes I need to talk to someone about them. And people who engage in that with me are the people I want in my life. And I think it affects our relationship very positively to support each other in that way.
Hello, beautiful, creative people, and welcome to the Keep Creating podcast presented by Soundstripe, the podcast created by creators for creators. Every episode, we seek out successful creatives who dedicate their lives to pursuing a creative trade or career. We ask them some questions and soak in all the truth their stories seep. Also, we can package it up and provide more creatives like you the inspiration, education, and tools to grow in your own unique pursuit to keep creating. I'm Joel Porter, and I'm excited for the opportunity to host this show and dialogue with our guests about what creativity looks like in their lives. So, without any more delay, thanks so much for listening, and let's get started. About all you can do in life is be who you are. Some people will love you for you, most will love you for what you can do for them, and some won't like you at all. The reward for conformity was that everyone liked you except yourself. These two sentences are two separate quotes from writer, activist, and feminist Rita Mae Brown. I love how these two bits of wisdom, when mashed together, create a sort of call and response. The first gives us as creatives a template for how to live and embrace individuality, and the other warns us of the consequences we might be left with if we ignore our quirks, interests, and passions in pursuit of conformity. In our Western culture today, there are plenty of voices yelling at us, telling us who we should be. And far too often, because of the vulnerable nature of creativity, we are allowing these voices to dictate and validate our work, our art, and sometimes our worth. But I would be willing to reason that if we were to listen to our own voice a little more, we would be artists and people who, when looking back, created things we're proud of and became people who are proud to be just the same. So I ask you today to look inside yourself for a moment and answer these questions. What is it that I want to create? And who am I becoming? My guest today, Hannah Messenger, is an eater, writer, professional people feeder, and earnest individualist based in Nashville. Above all else, she's an evangelist for being a cheap cook. Every Monday since September 2018, people have written to her on Instagram about what odds and ends they have in their kitchen, and she tells them what to make. That's how the Pantry Raid podcast was born, as a conversation between her and people who struggle to cook what they have on hand without a recipe. It's a conversation she hopes to continue having in many forms for many years to come. Hannah was an absolute joy to talk with and has great perspective for what it means to honor individuality. I'm excited for you to hear our conversation, so let's get right to it. Hannah.
Yes.
Thank you for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
I am really looking forward to this. I have a feeling this is going to be a very unique viewpoint and stance and perspective on creativity. So I'm really excited to dive into your story and dive into this idea of creativity.
Let's do it.
So to start, I usually ask the hardest question. How would you describe yourself as a creative?
That's a great question. Nashville is very obsessed with the Enneagram. Have you noticed that?
Yes.
And I have a counselor friend who says it's not definitive of who you are, but it's a good way to find words to describe your experiences and your feelings. Mm-hmm. So I think I'm going to start with that, which is I'm a 4-wing 5, which is a thing that doesn't make sense at all because 4s are super creative and 5s like love information and like color coding. They seem like they should clash. But that is totally how my brain works. Everything is color coded. Even in the terms of like very strange ideas that pop into my head, I'll like wake up at 5 a.m. and be like, all the yellow things should go in one cabinet in our kitchen. Like I'm kind of bananas.
That is so fascinating. I have never heard anyone describe the world as color-coded before, other than, like people with like synesthesia.
Which I don't think I have. I think I just really like colors.
Okay. Love it.
Yeah.
So did you go and organize your colors then this morning?
That was last spring. And yes, I did.
Okay.
I got up out of bed and did that.
So is your bookshelf the same way? All the books?
All by color. And it makes people so angry. But I know where everything is because I remember what color the cover of a book is.
Well, that works. So then how did you get to the point where you're doing what you're doing?
I was encouraged to be creative from a very young age. I think my parents recognized my ability as a writer very young and sent me to like workshops and always bought me books and stuff, which was awesome. And then I had this mentor in high school named Kathy Cash. I was in a like interpretive dance company, and she was the creative director. And she really like nurtured the monster within me to like let out my weird. And I don't know where I would be without that. It's such a formative age. And I'm so grateful to her that she was like, do you want to act like you're picking bugs out of the air? Do you want to scream at random on stage? Like, let's do it, which was so cool. So, yeah, I think I just got on the track really early.
I'd love to dive into that a little bit more. I mean, it sounds like this person in your life was a huge influence and someone that you yourself, you've been considered a mentor. What were some of the pivotal things that you learned from this mentor? Especially, I mean, like you said, that is a super important formative period of life. What were some of the things that like really stuck with you and that you still to this day can reach back and be like, that was really important and this is something that I still subscribe to?
I think I learned a lot about creative problem solving because creativity, it's like you get all these ideas and then you get a ton of roadblocks. And you not only have to learn how to express your ideas, but overcome the roadblocks.
Mm-hmm.
And so, especially working in a group with other creative people to come up with choreography, for example, Kathy was very encouraging of communication and just creative problem solving, which is so important.
So, can you give us an example of an opportunity or a strategy for creative problem solving?
Can I give you a more recent example?
Yes. It doesn't have to be from high school.
Okay. In my adult professional life, my mentor has been this woman named Jennifer Justice, who's a local writer. She has a book called Nashville Eats, and I got to do some of the food styling for it, which was incredible. But while we were working on it, she told me, and I'm sure this is someone else's quote, but I always associate it with her because I trust her, and it really stuck with me when she said it. She said that worry is a misuse of the imagination. You cannot hear that enough times, that when you're even worried about coming up with a solution, it's still your imagination. Like you have to stop and almost step outside of yourself to come up with solutions because it's still your creative brain thriving in a way. You just have to reframe what it's doing.
So what are some strategies or things that you implement to do that?
I am a big fan of saying no.
Okay.
Yeah. That was pretty new for me starting in 2018. I used to work as a food photographer, and I had this great therapist tell me that goals and values are different, and your values inform your goals. And so once you decide what your values are, you can ask yourself about every project, is it bringing me closer to my goals? Does it line up with my values? And I found that the spring of 2018, that a lot of the work I was doing was just in vain. So I started asking myself those questions and ended up just saying no to work constantly. And taking on new work that was getting me closer to my goals through my values.
So where did that lead you then?
That led me to Pantry Raid. That's how it came to life. And for those of you who don't know, Pantry Raid is both a game we play on my Instagram on Mondays, every single Monday, where you tell me what odds and ends you have in your kitchen and I tell you what I would make with them. And it's also a podcast that explores how to make more food and less waste, one ingredient at a time.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that something as wonderful as Pantry Raid stemmed from saying no, from actually like taking something out of your life.
Yeah.
Not adding more to it in order to, because I feel like in a lot of our culture today, we're preached to hustle. We're preached to go, 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 go. And for creatives, there's kind of this, I feel like this dichotomy between what we value and what we're told, or how we're told to go get that value. And so I do think it's an incredible piece of advice to start with what you value and say no to everything else. So thank you. We're starting off hot.
All right.
We're starting off great. Regarding your creative process, and this can go all the way back to high school when you were doing choreography, or it can be used with Pantry Raid in your podcast. What do you love about creativity? and your creative process, and what frustrates you the most about it?
I'm going to start with what frustrates me the most about it, which is myself. And it relates a lot to what you just said is like, I feel like I should be getting more work done. I think that's a really common feeling because of the hustle culture and the gig culture, that I should be on a certain timeline. And then I guess that's also what I like about creativity is that it doesn't really work like that. And you do have to sit down and do the work even when you don't feel like it, but it also unfolds in its own time.
So you don't keep yourself to a super tight schedule when you're like, are you setting goals for completion?
Yeah, the new season will come out in May of my podcast, season 2, and then come out regularly every 2 weeks for the whole summer. Last season was not like that at all. It was super loosey-goosey, and it ended up causing me more stress than it did anything else.
So what do you see as the difference between the last season and this season then? Like what types of growth? And do you think that it benefits from having it scheduled out and releasing it like this? Or
I do. I think it's going to create a lot more consistency. I don't have any kind of background in radio journalism. I would like to give a big shout out to my producer, Tony. He is the world's greatest producer. His name is Tony Gonzalez. He's from WPLN. I learned everything I know about radio journalism from Tony. So this season, I'm just listening to Tony more about what I should do, which I learned a lot from Tony in season 1, and I'm listening to Tony more in season 2.
Yeah. So I guess now, so you have a schedule for this.
Mm-hmm.
In trying to create all of the content for this upcoming season, breaking it down even more, do you hold yourself to a daily schedule or habits or anything?
Not super closely, no. I do wake up really early. I usually am awake at 6 a.m. and ready. My brain is like on at 7 a.m. It's kind of annoying because I get going and start sending emails, and at 7:30, I'm like, why is no one emailing me back? So I get most of my work done before 3 p.m. That's my big thing because that's just how my brain functions. If you are having a conversation with me after 6 p.m., I'm just sorry. I'm sorry. I'm not all there. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really try to hit the road running at like 7:30 and go as hard as I can until 3.
So what does an average day from 6 till 3 look like then?
I do a lot of research. I do a lot of reading. I think a big part of the creative process is, and that's once again the 5 in the Enneagram, is soaking everything you can in, being a sponge, always being a student, so that I'm very, very nervous to like misspeak on my podcast. I don't ever want to tell you to do something that's going to result in you ruining your dinner. That's so important to me.
Yeah.
So I do just a ton of reading throughout the day. I do a lot of recipe testing. One thing that people don't really consider when they get into, and I didn't either, when they get into food styling or recipe developing or food writing, is there is a lot of cleaning up to do. An average day for me involves quite a good deal of like cleaning the kitchen.
Cleaning and organizing and getting it ready for the next.
Yeah.
So if the kitchen is your workspace, how do you prepare your workspace every day for this type of research and discovery and creative process?
I love cleaning my kitchen. Whenever I post photos of my fridge, people DM me and say, LOL, no one's fridge looks like that. But I keep it as organized as possible. I think some of my personal best advice to home cooks is to limit how many condiments you have at one time, because if you can't see them, you're going to forget they're there. Or if you have so many, it's going to give you information overload and you're not going to be able to decide what you want for dinner. And so keeping like a less is more mindset in my kitchen is so super helpful. And also just the heart of Pantry Raid, to use up what you have before you get something else.
Another question regarding cooking and regarding food type creativity is, you know, when a lot of people think of creativity and when a lot of people think of art specifically, the culinary arts might not come to mind first. Do you see some of the same type of thinking in the culinary arts that you would in, say, a more traditional art like painting or writing or composing?
Sure, I think there's definitely overlap. Creativity overlaps into just everything in life, but I don't think that's what it has to be for everybody. For some people, they love doing the most detailed kind of cake and decorating it elaborately. And I have my moments like that too.
Hmm.
Actually, my first job in Nashville was decorating wedding cakes at the
Really?
Cupcake Collection. But if that's not what you want it to be, if you literally just want it to be nourishment for you or part of your routine, a thing that calms you down, I think cooking can serve us in a lot of different ways depending on what we need.
Do you gravitate towards one style of food or one, I guess, genre of food?
I do gravitate towards vegetarian food, although I am not a vegetarian. I grew up, I came from the restaurant industry. My
Hmm.
family had kind of a meat and three style of restaurant for 63 years in Chattanooga. And I grew up eating like vegetable casserole instead of baby food.
Hmm.
So vegetables have just always been a huge part of my life. And I love working with all the farmers here in Nashville who have beautiful produce and do such a good job bringing us really cool and interesting ingredients.
Okay, so going back to your Enneagram 4 Wing 5.
Mhm.
Lots of research, lots of reading, sponge. Are there any practices or habits or tools that you've recently discovered that have significantly impacted the quality of your output?
Taking baths.
What an answer. Elaborate though.
I take a bath every single Saturday.
Okay.
Baths, it's the way people, I think, get ideas while they're driving or in the shower. It's just a way of relaxing your body. And then a lot of times, because your mind is relaxed, good things come from it.
Yeah. I read a quote yesterday about a famous writer who made the rule if he didn't want to do anything, he could do nothing. But he couldn't read, he couldn't draw, he couldn't do anything fidgety, he could not sit and do a crossword. He either had to do nothing or do something. And the
Mhm.
only something he was allowed to do was writing. And he said that after a while, sitting in your desk chair and staring out the window even loses its luster. And eventually, writing will be the most attractive thing that he could do. And so that's how he got himself to dive into ideas and to create worlds, was to just be completely still and give himself a black and white answer of what he could do, either nothing or something.
That is mind blowing.
Isn't that crazy?
It is. Have you read the book Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert?
Yes.
Okay, I had to read it very slowly because I agreed and disagreed with it so vehemently. I would get like heated and have to put it down. But I love the idea of treating your creativity and your ideas almost like a business partner that you have respect for. So you show up to meetings with them. You don't cancel at the last minute.
Hey friends, it's time to give a shout out to our artist of the week, Oh Boy, for writing the song Lost, which is the featured track on today's episode. Let's just take a few seconds and listen to a little more of this great track. Well, I've got some good news. If you're looking for music like this to use in your own creative project, you can license Lost or check out some other great options by simply heading to soundstripe.com/keepcreating. There you'll find a custom playlist of all the songs we use on the show. If you like that playlist, make sure to check out some of the other curated playlists featured on our app. I'm positive you'll find something you love. All right, that's all I've got this week. Let's hear more from Hannah. Do you meditate?
I don't, but as a forever student, I have read this book called Why Buddhism is True about the benefits of meditating. But as a creative person, I'm not disciplined enough to do it.
Maybe we'll all get there someday.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing, though, is there are so many things pointing to how good these things are, like meditation and habit and discipline and stuff like that.
Yeah. Maybe baths are my form of meditation.
Yeah. So you said you read. I want to keep diving into this. What are a couple books or podcasts or media resources that you subscribe to and stay like heavily in tune with?
I'm super into fiction, specifically kind of like science fiction-y magic realism fiction.
Okay.
I just read this book called, here comes the brain fog. It's called The Starless Sea. And I'm speechless. The silence is just me blank faced. I don't even know what to say about it. I adore stories, and maybe this is meditation too. Stories that take me out of my world for a minute and let my brain ease into something else
Hmm.
to give it a break.
Yeah.
It's almost like it reads like a myth. It's so beautiful. And another one that I've loved is A Darker Shade of Magic, V.E. Schwab, who is actually from Nashville. It's a trilogy. Can't recommend it enough. I love seeing other people really let their weird and their creativity free. Those are two great examples of it. Same thing with The OA, if you've seen that on
Mm-hmm.
Netflix.
Yeah.
Couldn't get enough of it. Super sympathized with people who went on hunger strike when it was canceled. I was like, what's going to happen?
I know that was a really great series and it was super unfortunate. I think what was great about that series, and I can't speak to either of the series that you mentioned book-wise, I'll have to pick them up. I love science fiction as well, is that it gives us an opportunity to, like you said, ease into where there's enough real to hang on
Mhm.
to make it seem familiar. But then it's almost like an exercise in imagination, or it's
Mhm.
like a training exercise for our imagination to see, like, oh man, I didn't even know that was possible.
Yeah.
And how does that, though, then translate, like that kind of thinking, translate into the work that you do every day?
I think it makes me a better writer when I write about food or the cooking process. I think just having read good writing trains your brain to do good writing.
Who have you worked with or spent time with? You've already mentioned a couple that you consider mentors. And what what did you look for in those people to decide that is who I want to work with and that's who I want to learn from and that's who I want to mentor me? Like what are the qualities that you look for in a mentor?
I think kindness and patience are huge. Jennifer, for example, also just gave me a chance. I had never styled. I had been doing food styling work for a little while, but I hadn't styled a cookbook before.
Hmm.
And I looked up to her because she had been writing for the Tennessean. She had been freelancing, writing mostly about food. And she had this book deal, and I was mesmerized by it. And so honored that she asked me to work on it. And then it was not a don't meet your heroes situation. It was the opposite of that. It was like she was everything I hoped she would be and even kinder to me.
Yeah. So if you're willing to share, I'd be really interested to hear an example of a major failure that you've had in your creative life, whether that's professionally, whether that's personally. I know that in creativity, it's very hard to separate yourself from the work oftentimes. So there is this kind of muddiness there as well. But what is an example of a major failure that you've had or a setback? And how did you bounce back from it? What were some of the steps that you took to heal or to mend or fix the situation?
I've had so many failures, I don't even know how to pick one. I've had several points in my career where I've had a lot of momentum and just I haven't taken advantage of it.
Hmm.
And I've learned from that over the years. My biggest recent, I don't know if it was a personal failure, but at the end of 2017, everything came crashing down in my life. I moved to Chattanooga to work for a company. I moved there in November for a company that ended up laying me off in January. And my ex-husband left that December, and then my family closed our restaurant that December
Oh
as
my
well.
gosh.
So that in many ways felt like failure temporarily, just because everything I had going on was no longer present.
Yeah.
And I ended up taking the whole month of February off in 2018. Oh, kind of like that writer was saying, to do nothing,
Yeah.
which was so counterintuitive. Like I couldn't necessarily afford to do it, but it was so helpful because before that, I cannot remember a time when I had taken a moment off. Even when I had traveled, it was like to go to someone else's wedding, or I had not done a single stop, maybe in my whole life.
Hmm. So what did you do during that month then? And how did you like reframe? Like how did that month set up the next couple of years?
I went for a lot of walks. Walking is awesome. When people ask me my favorite things to do, I'm like, walk, sleep, be nice to my dog. I sound so boring.
I'm pretty sure that's everyone. I can identify with all three of those. So you're in good company.
Yeah, so I went for a lot of walks. I cooked other people's recipes, which is not something I did before that. And it's not something I do now because I have so much work of my own to produce that I just don't have time to cook other people's recipes. So I had a couple cookbooks that I had wanted to cook from forever. And I made their food. And it was very comforting to not feel the pressure of making something. I read a lot, of course. I watched this TV show called I Love Dick. Have you seen it? It's on Amazon Prime. It's great. I can't say enough good things about it. I think it's Catherine Hahn is the star and Kevin Bacon. And it kind of flips the switch on men using women as their muse.
I have heard of this show.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
It's incredible.
Okay. I got to watch it.
Yeah.
So then after that month, what were some of the things that just started to trickle into your life that you started to do on more regularly too? You said everything was crashing down. How did you rebuild?
I started enjoying things again. There was a time when everything felt monotonous just because it was hard. Everything being hard, like my emotions in my life and everything falling apart felt hard. And it just trickled into everything and made even eating food hard to enjoy. So when that month was over, I found so much inspiration and slowly, it didn't happen immediately, but over time, I would go to a diner and eat a new dish and just feel like angels were singing. It was crazy how much rest helped my body and my brain.
Do you think it just helped you become aware, or was it an actual perspective shift?
Maybe both.
A little bit of both? Okay, well, since we're being introspective right now,
okay.
If you had the ability to hop in a time machine and go back and talk to a younger version of yourself, what advice would you give to them?
Maybe go on antidepressants sooner. I literally just started this past week and I should have started when I was like 17.
Yeah. With that, do you think you were hesitant because you saw it as a defeat or a surrender or something you weren't comfortable with?
I think it was a control thing. I think a lot of people feel, like, and myself included, feel that if you can just rein in your emotions, if you can just have a better schedule or sleep better, you can control how you feel. And that is absolutely not true for everybody.
So what advice would you give to somebody struggling with that choice right now?
I think, especially once you've exhausted all the options, it is an option. It's just something that is there for you to explore, and it's your choice, and it's no one else's business.
And just to squash the myth, do you feel less creative?
No.
I just think that's important.
Yeah.
Because I think that that's a fear with a lot of creatives who do struggle with that is, there is some almost honor tied to their melancholy and
history. Yeah.
It's just like they feel like it's part of them and it's where everything good comes from. But
no, thank you. I'd like to put that part of my life behind me.
All right. What do you think the biggest challenges creatives face today are?
Getting paid.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't you think so?
I think so. And I think this answer comes in a multitude of forms. I think oversaturation is one. I think, but I'm not supposed to be answering this question right now. you just
so
flipped that on me.
I'm sorry. I love that question and I want to know everyone's answer to it.
So a lot of the guests have said oversaturation. A lot of the guests have said social media and distraction or comparative thinking, kind of the standardization of taste where everything looks good that's being put out, or most things look good. And it's really easy to curate certain lives and have false perceptions of what life really is. But dive into getting paid.
I don't have a good history. My relationship with money has been bad, not in the sense that I'm in debt or anything, but I grew up in a Southern household that was like, we don't talk about money. So I never knew how to phrase the words like, that's not enough money. My work is worth more money. I can't work with you because you're not willing to pay me properly. I have gotten underpaid so many times because I was uncomfortable saying those things. And the more you say them, the more comfortable you're going to get with them. But you got to practice it and it's hard. It feels disgusting if you grew up in a household like mine.
Yeah. So for young creatives, how do you go about valuing your work?
I think finding a mentor is really helpful just to understand what the industry standard for work is. I think the more we talk about how much everyone is getting paid, the more we can come up with standardized numbers for certain things, just like every other industry. But keeping it hush hush is not necessarily helpful.
Right. So go find a mentor, go ask them, start with what you think is fair, and work up from there.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that there's going to be a cap on your work, because you might discover something that is totally unique and outvalues the industry standard. But that's a good place to start. What's your process for maintaining motivation? Because motivation is something that shouldn't be relied on, but is very important.
I think having whatever little routine I have helps keep my motivation in place. Sleeping, I go to sleep at 10 p.m. It's super rare for me to stay up past 10 p.m., even if I'm socializing. I'll be like the life of a party for an hour, and then I'm slipping out the back door. Like, love you, gotta go. Also, I'm very aware of how introverted I am. So I like to limit my time with people. I notice the more I socialize, the more motivation I lose, because that's what introversion is. You've probably talked about this a lot on the podcast before.
Here and
right?
there, actually, extrovertedness and introvertedness have not come up as... I got to start asking that question more.
Okay, so extroversion is when you get energy from being around people, and introversion is when you lose energy from being around people. And I lose energy like you would not believe. It goes so fast for me. So I think motivation is very closely tied to that.
It all comes back to self-awareness.
It really does.
It all comes back to self-awareness. How you spend your days, how you decide your values, how you go about your life and do important work, all has to do with who you are and self-awareness.
Absolutely.
Outside of the Enneagram, what are some steps that you've taken to become more aware of yourself?
I shaved all my hair off.
A good start?
Yeah. That was almost 4 years ago now.
Wow.
There was a point in time, it's really interesting that other people say to me, what did you say? The homogenization of how everything looks in media?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. There was a point in Nashville when all the restaurants had barnwood and mason jars and Edison bulbs. The menus all had pimento cheese. They all had deviled eggs. They all had fried chicken. And when we went to the restaurants, we would all wear I'm a Jean and Willie jeans and Nisola's shoes and Elizabeth Suzanne shirts. Like everyone did that, myself included. And once I started noticing that was happening, I really stepped back and started reassessing why I was doing those things, and not just what I was wearing, but like body parts I was shaving or makeup I was wearing or how I was styling my hair. And my dad is Jewish and my mom is Greek. I just have so much more hair than any one person should ever have to deal with. And I kind of came to the conclusion that it was more of a burden than a benefit to my life. And I had a bob really briefly, like I chickened out and cut it short. And then 3 months later, shaved my head.
Just got rid of it.
Yeah.
That's really interesting though. I mean, the way that I'm hearing it is, in order to become self-aware, you started to examine almost every part of your life and Marie Kondo it.
And then also practice it in self-expression. Yes.
Interesting. Dive into that a little bit more.
That's another 4 thing. I'm sorry to keep talking about the
I'm a 4,
Enneagram,
so.
But
I love this.
Self-expression and then other people seeing you for who you are is such a big thing.
So how did you go about that and allow yourself to do that with no constraints? Or, I mean, of course, I'm sure there was a struggle and it was some getting used to, but how, from a mindset perspective and from like a personal perspective, did you get to a point where you could say, no, I'm doing this because I think it's right. And it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks?
I have no idea.
Hmm.
I don't know. I have found in many situations that I never intend to go out and be the person who's being disruptive, who's disrupting the system. And then I almost step out of my body and look down at myself and think, oh, my mouth is moving and words are coming out.
Yeah.
It's almost an out of body experience when I'm making decisions like that are super out of the norm.
Mm-hmm. How does that affect your relationships when those out of body experience moments happen? Because usually those are followed by change. And how does that look?
I have been called insubordinate on every single performance review I've ever had.
Insubordinate.
Office work is not for me. So that is how it affected my young professional life. But I think it's affected my life in a really good way because the people who appreciate that and are really patient communicating with me and hearing my ideas, because sometimes I just need to bounce ideas off the wall. It's not that I'm being so insubordinate or disruptive. It's just like I have a lot of ideas and sometimes I need to talk to someone about them. And people who engage in that with me are the people I want in my life. And I think it affects our relationship very positively to support each other in that way.
Do you feel like do you ever feel like that point of view is selfish? I'm asking because these are questions that I think about all the time because I can definitely relate very, very closely to what you're saying.
I don't think it often plays out that black and white.
I have a couple fun ones, a couple fun questions to ask. But before I do that, I'd love if you'd share where everyone can follow and find you online and continue to see your work and if they want to get in contact with you.
Yeah. You can find the Pantry Raid podcast on all major podcast apps. You just search Pantry Raid and it should come up. Tony's in charge of that, so I know it's true. You can follow me on Instagram at HMM. Everyone always misses the second M.
HMM.
HMMESSINGER. HM Messenger. And then my website is the same, hmmessenger.com.
All right. Simple enough. Is there anything with your work? You said season 2 of the podcast is coming out in May. Mm-hmm. Anything else that we should be looking forward to in the next couple months?
No, it's season 2 all the time, all day, every day right now.
All right.
That's my whole world.
We will make sure to keep our eyes out for that. Okay. Couple fun questions.
All right.
Is there a parable or a children's tale or a children's character that you relate with more than others, or like a fictional character that you see a lot of yourself in?
The third Harry Potter book, spoilers ahead. The third Harry Potter book, he's struggling the whole book to create a Patronus, this like protective charm, and he can't do it, and he can't do it, and he can't do it. And then he's in this life or death situation on the edge of a lake, and he sees across the lake someone cast one, and he thinks it's his dad. It's a person who looks like him, but he doesn't think it's him. And he ends up going back in time to that moment and realizing it was him. And he's able to cast it from the other side of the lake to protect himself. But he can only do it because he had already seen himself do it. And I love that parable for creativity because you won't know how good of a product you can produce until you've produced a good product.
So you're Harry Potter.
Kind
in
of.
the third book.
Yeah.
Casting the Patronus spell.
Yeah.
All right.
And when I started doing Pantry Raid, I had already conquered food photography and food styling. So I felt a lot more confident conquering a new creative medium because I had done it twice already.
That's really interesting. So practical advice is start making something.
Mm-hmm.
Make something.
Yeah.
And just know you can.
Yes. I talk about this in my Creative Mornings talk too, but look up Ira Glass's The Gap. And that's exactly what it says.
Is it the taste between the product that you want to make?
And the bridge between them is a ton of work.
Yep. Oh, I love that. All right. What is one thing, if you weren't doing Pantry Raid if you could do one other thing, anything, and you had the full capability and proficiency to do it, what would it be?
I would paint still lifes.
Still lifes?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. It's colors and textures and fruit. Sign me up.
In like the impressionistic style, like the old school?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great answer. You know, you could do it.
So my retirement plan is to write fiction.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome too.
Maybe my second answer. It's not a good retirement plan because there's not that much money in it.
No, but tons of joy.
True. And I figure it took me about 30 years to become good at what I do now. And by the time I'm ready to retire, I will have 30 years of practice writing fiction, and then I'll be ready to get going.
To go. All right. And last question. What is one question that you wish I would have asked you?
Oh. Joel, I think you're doing a really good job. I think you covered it.
I mean, I appreciate that. But everyone's got one thing that they want to talk about.
One thing I want to talk about. Can you really put miso in everything?
Can you?
Yes. I don't ever make miso soup, but I put it in like hot chocolate and brownies. I put it in
what?
All kinds of stuff.
Miso and chocolate?
Yeah, because think about like a salted chocolate truffle. It's the same effect. It's that same delicious saltiness against the sweetness.
Well, that is like the hottest tip that we've gotten on this podcast is you can put miso in chocolate.
Yeah. Actually, I'm not a big drinker because I'm such a lightweight. And in January, I had 2 glasses of wine and was like, I'm going to buy myself a Valentine's Day present. And I did it. And I woke up the next morning and I saw an order confirmation from Etsy and it said name necklace. And I was like, gross, I don't know myself at all. And I opened the email and I hadn't typed in my name. I had typed in miso. So now I have a name necklace that says miso.
Oh my gosh. That's fantastic. I think that's probably a really great place to end. Okay. Thank you so much. It has been such a pleasure to have you on. One more time, really quick, if you want to let people know where they can follow you.
Yeah, at HM Messenger on Instagram, hmmessenger.com, or Pantry Raid on any podcast app.
Pantry Raid. All right. Hannah, thank you so much. It's been an absolute joy. And please make sure to follow her. Make sure to keep your eyes out for the next season of Pantry Raid. And until next time, good luck with everything. And yeah, that's it.
All right. Thanks, Joel.
I want to thank Hannah again for being on the show, and I hope she's encouraged you to embrace the weird that makes you, you. Make sure to subscribe to our show so you don't miss future episodes, and help us build a healthy and collaborative community of creators by sharing this with someone who could use some words of inspiration today. And lastly, I want to thank our team here at Soundstripe for making the show possible. If you don't know who we are, Soundstripe is a subscription-based music licensing company that provides unlimited music to subscribers for all video and creative needs. If you need music for your podcast, YouTube channel, vlog, radio show, film, anything, go to soundstripe.com to learn more about our amazing library of music and sound effects. We also create and curate a ton of inspirational and educational material that is featured on our blog. With everything we do, our mission is to keep creatives creating. So once again, thanks for joining us this week. Hope you come back next time. And remember, no matter what, keep creating.